you don't know who Tony Buzbee is, he is the one who is spearheading a lot of these lawsuits that are going against Diddy. Over 100, he mentioned in a recent press conference, over 100 lawsuits have been brought to him. They're still sorting through a lot of the lawsuits that came through. They have settled some of the lawsuits that have been filed already. But he's most famously known for this lawsuit that recently came out with this alleged victim who was 13 years old at the time this alleged incident happened. She went to an after party for the VMAs. Diddy, another celebrity female, and Jay-Z were there. And Jay-Z's mentioned in this lawsuit. They allege that Jay-Z assaulted this 13-year-old at the party. Then it came out that some of the things that she alleged in this lawsuit, she may have misremembered. We're not going to get into that. So anyway, that's who Tony Buzbee is. He's going against Diddy, going against Jay-Z, and pretty much anybody that was in and around the scene at that time when Diddy was on his way to rising into his power that he has now. So now, in light of that, Jay-Z has not backed down. He's been firing back at Tony Buzbee with lawsuits and memorandums and motions, basically trying to show the judge that mentioning Jay-Z in this lawsuit was a mistake. And in most recent events, Tony Buzbee has now hired his own attorney. And it's starting to look like he might be losing this one. So what happened? Shout out to Megan Kuniff over on X for posting this. He says 2 new lawyers have joined the assault case against Jay-Z. And they're representing not only the person who is alleging that Jay-Z did these things, but they're also representing Tony Buzbee too. It's very interesting that a lawyer is like, hey, can y'all help me out here? What do they say? Jane Doe versus Diddy, Jay-Z, and all these other entities here. Please take note that Mark P. Wrestler of, I'm not going to pronounce that, KBT LLP, an attorney admitted to practice in this court, hereby enters an appearance as counsel for the plaintiff Jane Doe and for the plaintiff's attorney Anthony Tony G. Buzbee. Yikes. In the above captioned action, and respectfully request that all further papers and correspondence be served upon him. All right. So Tony Buzbee is over there shaking in his boots allegedly because he's having to get some representation, which is crazy. And then they also say, please take notice that he has Veronica. I've never seen it spelled like that. Veronica A. of KBT LLP, an attorney admitted to practice in this court, hereby enters an appearance as counsel for plaintiff Jane Doe and for plaintiff attorney Tony Anthony Buzbee in the above captioned action, and respectfully requests that all further papers and correspondence be served upon her. So apparently Tony Buzbee's tired of dealing with this. Y'all have to let me know what you think about this. Is this an indication that Jay-Z might be in trouble and now that Tony Buzbee has some lawyers representing him? Or is there more to this than we know? Because it's seeming like Tony Buzbee is worried about how this is going to play out. Maybe there's some missteps there and he needs representation to help him work through this. I don't know. Y'all have to let me know what you think in the comments. We also have a response here. So what is this motion? Y'all check this out. This is the plaintiff's memorandum of law in opposition to defendant Sean Carter's motions for sanctions. If you remember, Jay-Z was, again, obviously upset about the accusations that were being levied against him by Tony Buzbee and the tactics that he was using to do that. So what happened is he asked the judge to input some sanctions against Tony Buzbee, basically making him pay for the way he's gone about handling this lawsuit in general. So now it looks like Tony Buzbee's attorneys are already getting to work, and they just filed this as of yesterday afternoon. So what are they saying in this new memorandum? We're going to get into it. First, the plaintiff and her counsel, Anthony Buzbee, Tony Buzbee, and the Buzbee law firm together, Buzbee, we're going to call them, respectfully submit this memorandum of law in opposition to the motion of defendant Sean Carter and the Rule 11 of the Federal Rules of Civil Procedure to dismiss the plaintiff's amended complaint and to award him monetary sanctions against Buzbee. What are they saying? Carter's motion amounts to an outrageous and unprecedented attempt to silence a plaintiff who alleges that 24 years ago, she was 13 years old. Defendants Carter and Combs assaulted her, allegedly. Carter's celebrity status does not entitle him to special treatment by the courts, which they already got in trouble with the judge for that, and they kind of backed off and then started to do things the right way. And certainly not on the mere say-so of his lawyers, and this court has recognized. Yep, we just mentioned that. We've got I'm not going to try and say their name. The court will not fast-track the judicial process merely because the counsel demands it. And that was what the Judge Torres said in this case, right? Relying solely on what his lawyers say are inaccurate details in the plaintiff's accounts of this horrific assault, Carter asked the court to ignore the federal rules of civil procedure and, as a sanction for what his lawyers falsely say was Buzbee's failure to investigate, summarily dismiss plaintiff's well-placed FAC in its entirety, which would run roughshod over her right to take discovery and prove her claim before a jury. So basically they're saying they're trying to cut this off before it even goes through the proper process. Although when it comes to Buzbee's failure to investigate, he did admit that, allegedly. He did admit that according to the NBC interview that they did. And he said, well, maybe we didn't vet her like we should have, which is kind of wild for them to say. Either way, even assuming the plaintiff misremembers details from 24 years ago, that is no basis for evading the requirement of Rule 12 by dismissing her FAC under Rule 11, but solely on purported factual disputes concerning those details. This is especially true where, as here, the purported factual disputes concern details arising solely from the memory of a victim, here a child victim of abuse. We'll say it that way, which it is well established typically causes memory lapses. So they're saying, of course, she's not going to remember. She was a child and she was involved in something that was very traumatic. But we also have other things surrounding that which say that maybe this didn't happen at all. Again, her father, the fact that there was no house that fit the description. Again, maybe she misremembered the house, right? We also have the way she describes being able to get to the after party doesn't make any sense because of distance. Her father saying, I don't remember picking her up from the gas station that she allegedly walked to in the middle of the night or early in the morning. The fact that the VMAs in 2000 weren't set up the way that she said it was set up or the way that she remembered. So even if you go to 2003, a lot of people are saying, oh, if you go to 2003, it actually looks like she's telling the truth. No, because the situation is still the same. There was no party there. And it's been documented that that was the case. So we got to move on from this. But Tony Buzbee seems like he's really willing to fight this. In fact, Carter's lawyers themselves got flatly wrong one of the details they falsely claim undercut the plaintiff's claim, asserting that at the time of the assault, Carter's co-defendant Combs did not own the house where the assault may have taken place. In fact, Combs did own the house. And they show that in pages 17 through 18. We'll get to later. Carter's lawyers purported certainly about what happened to the plaintiff. It's thus utterly unjustified. The NBC report, on which they principally rely, itself acknowledged that its purported findings do not necessarily mean the allegations are false. In ECF 6-1 at 3, that acknowledgement alone under applicable law removes any possible justification for Rule 11 sanctions here. In any event, when stripped of their salacious rhetoric, Carter's lawyers challenged plaintiff's allegations and recollections regarding watching the MTV VMA Awards shown on a Jumbotron, speaking to a limousine driver during the show, the location after party at which she was assaulted, speaking to a celebrity at the party, and plaintiff's father picking her up after she was assaulted. Also, as shown further below, none of those purported challenges are meritorious, and none come close to proving as they must to justify any Rule 11 sanction, let alone the most drastic sanction of all, dismissal, that Carter did not assault the plaintiff, or that, as Carter's lawyers also falsely say, Buzbee did not sufficiently investigate and was not permitted to rely on the plaintiff's unequivocal recollection that Carter assaulted her. So if I understand this correctly, what they're basically saying is that, yes, some of this information might be wrong. She may not have been at the VMAs. There may not have been a Jumbotron. There might not have been a limo driver. Her father might not have picked her up. But it could have taken place maybe 2 days later. Jay-Z was at a gas station getting ready to go out on his yacht, and he saw her walking by. And then Jay-Z assaulted her and went on his way. They're basically saying Jay-Z still may have assaulted her. It just may not have taken place in this exact way. That's crazy. This is wild, man. It shows you how insane these lawsuits are, because you can completely misrepresent what the facts were surrounding it, and you still have the opportunity to move forward. You still have to go through the legal process. You still have to go before a jury. You still have to plead your case. You still have to pay the money for the lawyer, and so on and so forth. And that's essentially what they're saying here is, hey, maybe she got it wrong, but it doesn't matter, because the fact is Jay-Z still could have assaulted her. I mean, back in 2003 or back in 2000, as the lawsuit says, I was 10. I mean, I guess basing it off of what they're saying, I could have assaulted her, right? I was 10 years old, but hey, she may have gotten it wrong, but it could have been me. The law is crazy, man. As the courts have made clear, Rule 11 sanctions will be imposed only in extraordinary circumstances. And you see Gluck Corporation versus Rothenhaus, of which celebrity status is not one. Here, there are no such circumstances at all, let alone extraordinary circumstances justifying sanctions against Buzbee. In fact, it is out of judicial concern for encouraging zealous advocacy that the courts maintain a high bar for establishing a Rule 11 violation. But over the top zealous advocacy is precisely what, as this court has also recognized, Carter's lawyers are engaging in, of which this motion is the latest and worst manifestation. Carter's lawyers' relentless filing of combative motions containing inflammatory language and ad hominem attacks is inappropriate, a waste of judicial resources, and a tactic unlikely to benefit his client. And again, Judge Torres said that when she responded to everything that was going on with the back and forth between Jay-Z and Tony Buzbee. Contrary to Carter's lawyers' baseless assertions, Buzbee included the allegations against Carter in the FAC only after an investigation, including numerous interviews of the plaintiff and vetting of the information the plaintiff provided that more than satisfied Rule 11 requirements, because it was done by the other law firm, obviously. On the other hand, Carter's lawyers' motion, which they filed even in the face of this court's discouraging them from doing so, is nothing more than an improper attempt to intimidate the plaintiff and her counsel, and is factually and legally meritless. I don't know about that one. If anyone has violated Rule 11, it is Carter and his lawyers, who under Rule 11 C2 should be sanctioned by awarding the plaintiff and her counsel the attorney's fees and costs incurred in having to respond to their motion. I mean, this back and forth is wild. Here's the background. As set forth herein and in accompanying Buzbee's declaration, plaintiff's counsel's pre-filing investigation was thorough and satisfied under Rule 11. How so? In early October of 2024, Jane Doe was referred to the Buzbee law firm and Tony Buzbee himself by the Ava, we'll call them the Ava Law Group. So we now know officially who the law group that referred her to Tony Buzbee is, because we hadn't seen them mentioned before. The plaintiff's co-counsel in this action. Before that referral, attorneys at the Ava Law investigated the veracity of the plaintiff's allegations. The plaintiff went through Ava Law's intake process, which the Buzbee law firm understood to include numerous interviews, including an interview by at least one and possibly more attorneys. The problem with this is, and I'll keep reading and maybe they'll get into it in a second, is that the issue that Jay-Z and Alex Spiro had with Tony Buzbee is that he didn't do his part, which just writing off on an interview that another law firm did, Alex Spiro argued isn't sufficient. Tony Buzbee still should have done his own investigations and his own interviews, even though it was referred to him. We'll see how it goes. Only when the attorneys at Ava Law were convinced that the plaintiff's allegations were true did they refer plaintiff to Buzbee. In addition, the attorneys at Ava Law prepared an initial version of the original complaint. Two attorneys at the Buzbee law firm interviewed the plaintiff, fact-checked various aspects of the plaintiff's complaint, and revised the complaint prior to its filing. This is hard to believe for me because we've even seen so many inconsistencies pointed out in this story just from simple research, whether that be the Jumbotron, the house, the area during that time. Maybe they're just going to say we got the date wrong. It was 2003 instead of 2000. But it seems like a simple fact check would allow you to see that a lot that was going on during this time didn't happen in 2000. Either way, prior to the filing of the FAC and naming Carter as a defendant, Mr. Buzbee and the other firm attorneys engaged in further rigorous due diligence to investigate the veracity and legal viability of the plaintiff's claim. The Buzbee firm's efforts included, among other things, intensive interviews amounting to cross-examinations of plaintiff by 3 or 5 attorneys, both alone and in teams, and research and verification of numerous details in the plaintiff's account. If that's the case, then how did she completely fold during this NBC interview? And why did she do the interview in the first place? This doesn't make sense to me. If they did all of this work and they're saying they were so thorough and they did, what did they say? Intensive interviews. How did she get on NBC and just completely ruin everything they had done? That's wild to me. Either Tony Buzbee told her not to do it and she wanted to do it, or this is just some grand scheme by Tony Buzbee to make some type of weird chess move. I don't know how they could go through all this and she got up there and just said, "Oh yeah, I don't remember." The Buzbee law firm ran a background check on the plaintiff and retained a retired police detective to research and confirm other aspects of the plaintiff's account. The Buzbee firm also conducted research to confirm the close connection between Carter and Combs, which further bolstered the conclusion that the plaintiff's allegations were plausible, credible, and warranted legal recourse. Well, they said that they believed they were true earlier, but we'll let that go. Plaintiff's allegations that on September 7, 2000, she, then 13 years old, went to Radio City Music Hall. They are doubling down on 2000 in New York City to try to attend the VMAs. As the plaintiff did not have a ticket to the show, she watched the VMAs on the Jumbotron outside. There was no... What? Oh, man, I'm so confused. I need one of our resident attorneys to help me out. Kel Bell, Javier M. Bailey, Joshua Van Lawn. Can y'all help me out with this? Why are they doubling down on the September 7th, 2000 date? Because we know for a fact that there was no Jumbotron. We know for a fact that the after party didn't take place at the place and the way it took place that was stated in this claim. So I don't understand why they would be here doubling down, unless it's maybe just to buy them time. I don't get it. The plaintiff alleges on September 7th, 2000, she, then 13 years old, went to Radio City Music Hall in New York City to try to attend the VMAs. As the plaintiff did not have a ticket to the show, she watched the VMAs on the Jumbotron outside. In hopes of talking her way into either the VMAs or after party, the plaintiff also approached and spoke to several limousine drivers parked nearby the VMAs, which is impossible. It's absolutely impossible. parked next to the VMAs, one of whom claimed to work for Combs and told her that the plaintiff fit what Diddy was looking for, and he invited her to an after party. Later that evening, the driver brought the plaintiff to an after party at what plaintiff believed to be a large white residence with a gated U-shaped driveway. Inside the party, the plaintiff recognized and spoke to several celebrities. After accepting a drink from a member of the waitstaff, plaintiff began to feel woozy and lightheaded, at which point she found an empty bedroom to rest in. But soon after, Combs, Carter, and another individual, Celebrity B, entered the room, at which Combs grabbed her and said, "Are you ready to party?" Thereafter, both Carter and Combs held the plaintiff down and assaulted her. Plaintiff was able to escape after fighting back, and she ultimately made her way to a gas station where she called her father, who then picked her up shortly before dawn. And he said that didn't happen. Carter's efforts to intimidate the Buzbee law firm. What else did he do? Since the initiation of this lawsuit, more than 24 past and current employees of clients of the Buzbee law firm have reported being approached and harassed by individuals claiming to be investigating Buzbee. And this was mentioned before, and they alleged it in something that they filed and sent to Judge Torres, going so far as to urge the clients to bring meritless lawsuits against Buzbee, including regarding his attempts to get justice for Carter and Combs' victims and offering them money to do so. This has resulted in several frivolous lawsuits against Buzbee. In filing in this action, Carter's lawyers have repeatedly referred to these lawsuits to discredit Buzbee. Based on the investigation efforts made by the Buzbee law firm and others, the Buzbee law firm and others, the Buzbee firm has filed several cases for barratry on behalf of its clients who were offered money to file a claim against the Buzbee law firm. These cases detail the illegal activities of the investigators and those behind them, who are believed to be Carter through his entertainment company, Roc Nation, and Carter's lawyers. And they actually said, Tony Buzbee said in one of his filings that they were able to identify somebody who worked for Roc Nation. And Kel Bell said doubling down makes no legal sense. Shout out to the Honorable Attorney Kel Bell. There's I don't know. I don't know what's going on here. I don't get why they would be doubling down. And thank you, Honorable Attorney Kel Bell, for saying that. It's just weird to me that they would say all of this happened and say, yeah, this is the case, when we know for a fact in 2000 this was impossible. Even just looking at pictures from that time that were taken, it was impossible. I don't know. I'm going to keep reading through this, and we'll maybe chop this into another video, but y'all got to let me know what you think in the comments and in the chat about this.